Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Citizen Live at 1. I am Terry Ann Chibet. Now, a top-level government security meeting is currently underway at the office of the Deputy President, William Ruto. The meeting is deliberating on the security situation in the country. This follows a series of terror attacks that have claimed the lives of Kenyans. Our senior reporter, Francis Gashuri, is currently at the venue of the meeting and now joins us live. Francis, if you are there, just tell us, give us a brief outlook of exactly what's happening on the ground.
Very good afternoon to you, Terry Ann Chibet. Indeed, we are at the office of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto. And what's happening, Terry Ann, now is that the top security chiefs are meeting the Deputy President in relation to the latest security threats in our country. Case in point, the twin suspected terror attack along Thika Road, and of course the Mombasa incident the day before. And of course, you're talking about 7 people have lost their lives in the two incidents. And so the top security chiefs are have been meeting this morning with Deputy President William Ruto to deliberate on what has been happening, and probably try and establish mechanisms or ways or strategies of handling the security threat in our country. Some of the persons, Terian, that I get information have been meeting the Deputy President since morning. The Inspector General of the National Police, Inspector General David Kimaiyo, the Interior Affairs and Coordination of Government Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olelenku, and of course the Director General of the National Intelligence Service, Brigadier Michael Gishangi. Those are some of the names that have information have been meeting the Deputy President since morning. And what is happening here, Terry Ann, is that we have set up and we are waiting for the Deputy President to give us a briefing on the content of their deliberations, and of course some of the ways and strategies that they are going to map to deal with the terror threat in our country. A very serious concern, Terry Ann. When you look at the social media, Kenyans are concerned that something is not right, and so probably will get to hear what the government is saying or what it intends to do in relation to the security threat, and of course the mechanisms that they will be using to deal with the terror attacks in our country. And of course the opposition has raised concern about the presence of our Kenya Defence Forces in Somalia, and even asking the government to lay the ground or come up with a roadmap of how our defense forces will leave Somalia, because they claim that it has a relationship with the terror attacks in our country. We'll also pose that question to the Deputy President and hear whether there are plans by the government to withdraw our troops from Somalia. That's all for now, Terry Ann, but our viewers can stay on standby, because as soon as we get an indication that Deputy President William Ruto and his team are coming for a briefing, we'll be able to update you so that you can link with us live from the office of the Deputy President here along Harambee Avenue, Nairobi County. Back to you, Terry Ann.
Thank you so much. That is our senior reporter, Francis Gashuri, coming to us live from the office of the Deputy President, where we are expecting a press conference where he will be talking about the state of insecurity, or the state of security of the nation. Well, heading on now to public university students where across the country want Education Cabinet Secretary Joseph Kaimenyi to resign over the planned increment of higher education tuition fees. The students claim that the Cabinet Secretary is denying poor Kenyans the right to education.
University student leaders from all public universities countrywide are calling on the government to reconsider the proposed tuition fees increment. Instead, the Kenya University Student Union now wants a task force set up to review the fees downwards.
We demand that Professor Kaimenyi immediately sets up a task force comprising of student leaders and other stakeholders in the education sector to continue with our earlier proposal to reduce the university fees by 50%.
The student leaders claimed that the move to increase tuition fees was infringing on the constitutional right to education and watered down the free primary and secondary education initiative by the government.
We want to ask President Uhuru, where are the priorities of his government? Recently, we have seen his government has a lot of money to pay off corrupt deals that were done in this country.
The students now want Education Cabinet Secretary Joseph Kaimenyi out of office for allegedly failing the education sector in the country.
I, on behalf of fellow student leaders and students and university students all over the country, declare war on Professor Kaimenyi. This war shall be fought every passing second of every passing day till Professor Kaimenyi adopts our proposal to reduce the fee by half.
Mukami Chaka for Citizen Live at 1.
Now, in Mombasa, security has been enhanced following the weekend attacks at so 4 people killed. Security patrols have been enhanced and roadblocks placed on key roads to boost security in the coastal town. Now, 2 women are being held by police in Mwingi town for allegedly peddling bang. The women were arrested after being found with 6 kilograms of bang. The 2 are being accused of operating a kiosk where they conduct their illegal business. The suspects are due to be arraigned before Mwingi court this afternoon. While confirming the incident, Mwingi OCPD Kipkemboi Birir said investigations are still ongoing.
Walienda wakapata zaidi ya kilo 5 ya bangi, ikiwa ingine kwa rolls na ingine kwa vifurushi imefungwa kando kando. Washukiwa wawili wamepatikana na watafikishwa kotini asubuhi.
Well, let's just now go back to look at the security situation in Mombasa, and our reporter Willis Raburu has been camping since the weekend attacks and joins us now. Willis, just give us a look at exactly how things are looking like in Mombasa now.
Well, a very good afternoon to you, Terry and Chebet. Yes, in Mombasa town, basically what has happened is there has been an enhanced security patrol and security checks in various places. The Nyali Bridge over there is also now being manned by members of the police force, the police service. And so what they're doing basically is checking if you have the proper documents, checking your car, the normal checks that you would expect. We've also been able to go around some of the hotels, and also they are also trying to enhance the security. But also interesting to note is that there is a meeting going on right now at the county command headquarters, and they're trying to see if they can meet also with the Matatu owners in Mombasa to try and come up with a way forward in terms of how they're going to work hand in hand. If you recall yesterday, there was the directive by the county commissioner that there will be more patrols in bus stops during the peak hours. And so what is going to happen now is that after this meeting, they're going to come up with a raft of measures to see what exactly they can do to enhance security in terms of identification and in terms of checks, because it is very easy to control the bus station because they have designated stops. But then for the matatus, it becomes a little bit difficult because then you're picking up people from different places, and so managing them might be difficult. So what is going to happen is that they're going to try to come up with a feasible way that they can work together with the matatu owners. And so that's basically it for now. What we're going to do, we're going to keep our ears on the ground, Terian, and as soon as we hear anything, we'll always continue to update people on our Twitter handle at Citizen TV News.
Willis, just before you leave, I'd like to find out a sense of exactly what the regular citizen in Mombasa is going through. What are they saying? How are they feeling about the situation currently?
Well, Terry-Ann, there is, that mixed reaction. Some are saying that some of these blocks that the police are setting up, and also I spoke to the county commissioner, and he's also received a few reports where some residents are saying that some of these checks are being used by police to, kind of ask for bribes and all. But again, he said he's investigating these allegations. For others, they welcome it because they say that enough is enough. We need to now work hand in hand with the security agencies to try to stop this menace that is affecting our country. And they say, I spoke to 2 or 3 of them who are in some of the checks, especially at Nalibridge, and they're saying that this is really going to help. In fact, there was an incident, I think, on Saturday where they had actually called and the county commissioner and actually said that, hey, we have people here who look like illegal immigrants, if you may, and so they were able to be arrested as well, and because they didn't have the travel documents that is required. So the underlying factor is, Terry-Ann, that as much as the police are going to be doing their job, but then it is also on the residents, not just of Mombasa County as well, but also of the country, to also see that they are doing their part, working together with the police, making sure that they know who is sitting next to them, who is living next to them, the reports of suspicious activity and such, so that, then the operations can work on both ends, Terry-Ann.
Willis, of course we cannot talk about Mombasa without touching on the tourism sector. Have you had a chance to speak to some of the stakeholders within the sector?
Well, there are some of them, Terry, and I've spoken to just the nightclub owners. Some of them are reporting over the weekend, and they're also saying that in the coming weekend, and just the numbers that they've seen since the blast has really decreased because people are afraid to go out in that regard, and because if you know, the phrase Mombasa Raha comes to mind. But then they say that, people are not, the numbers have witnessed a sort of a decrease in terms of those who are coming to this, the nightclubs and what have you. But then we're still out to talk to some of the hotel owners as well and see probably what they have to say. But as far as, and just even also we were in the market, Terry-Ann, and also the Mama Mboga, basically they're saying that, when it reaches a certain time, but then they cannot, people are coming in earlier to buy things and not going into, later on into the night as they say that they used to be open until 8 p.m., 10 p.m., then people will still be going. But then they say that now people are coming in by the close of business at 5, latest 6, and then business sort of plateaus. And so that's what they have to say so far, yeah.
Thank you very much, Willis. That's senior reporter Willis Raburu coming to us live from Mombasa, where he is following the security situation there. Now, still staying within that region, a police reservist was shot dead at his home in Malindi by an unknown hitman who escaped on foot. Mohammed Alian, who was shot in the head while at his balcony, was pronounced dead on arrival at the Tofik Hospital in Malindi town. A friend who was with him at the time is nursing injuries at the same hospital.
Mohammed Alian, a police reservist based in Malindi, was seated at the balcony of his house at Kwajiwa area of Shela Estate with 2 other friends when an unknown man broke into his house and shot him dead before injuring his friends. According to close relatives and eyewitnesses, the group was relaxing after their evening meal when the man appeared and shot the group before escaping on foot.
Hakuwa identified mara moja ni mtu gani, amejaribu kufukuzwa lakini suddenly amedisappear. Kwa hiyo hatukuweza kumidentify ni mtu sampuli gani.
Mohammed was pronounced dead on arrival at the Tofik Hospital in Malindi town, where one of his friends is currently admitted with gunshot wounds.
Hii imekuwa sasa ni too much. Leo ni Jamali, kesho ni yule, huyu ni huyu, leo ni yule. hatutaweza. Kwa nini serikali imenyamaza kimya?
Mohammed's death comes just a month after another police reservist, Ahmed Bakswain, was shot dead in his car in an early morning attack. Evelyn Wambui, Citizen Live at 1.
And now to have a look at exactly what the impact of the current situation, that's the security situation, is in the country in regards to how it is impacting the tourism sector is Minaz Manji, the CEO of Twiga Tours. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. First of all, we've seen the trend and how it happened since 2008 during the post-election violence and then Westgate and the other terrorism attacks that have come after that. And we saw how it badly impacted the tourism industry. How is it currently?
Well, you know, first and foremost, it's important to understand that this is different from the post-election violence in the sense that we've been seeing regular bomb blasts or security situations around the country, especially Mombasa and Nairobi. So first and foremost, we have to be mindful that this might be a problem that may stay with us for a longer time than we envisage.
Mm-hmm. So how are you dealing with it as stakeholders? Before the government comes in, how are you dealing with the situation as stakeholders?
Well, this morning I was actually fortunate enough to attend a tourism crisis meeting. And it's very important that the stakeholders have understood that we have a major issue at hand. This is going to be, if not a short-term, at least a medium-term problem, and therefore we need to address it accordingly. It's not a problem that we can see will terminate tomorrow. You know, it's been recurring from Westgate, and then we've had several other incidents in Mombasa and Nairobi. So the industry is now united in its approach, in that we must, first and foremost, have a very good international or local PR campaign.
Yes.
You see, this is very important. If you look at other destinations that have gone through what we are going through now, for example, if you look at Sri Lanka all those years ago, they still continue to manage their tourism in spite of their civil war. Egypt presently is going through really difficult times, but it manages its tourism, and until recently they were running 60 to 70% occupancy. Mm-hmm. Now that's because there is a face to all their campaigns. You know, I mean, if you look at our incident over the weekend, we've hardly had anybody who's actually stood up with a face and say to the world that, you know, this is not just our problem. It is a global problem. It is a problem that we found ourselves in because we have tried to help international agendas. I mean, sending our KDF into Somalia was not a Kenyan issue. It is an issue that needed to be solved from a global perspective. So, you see, this is important for the world to realize. And I can just go back a little bit and say, when we had the Boston Marathon incident last year, the world stood up and said, well, we will not be cowed by terrorism, or we will not be blackmailed by terrorism, etc. But when it happens to a third world country like Kenya, then suddenly the world leaves us alone to solve our own problem. That isn't fair.
So who is going to stand up?
I think that the industry is making these efforts as I speak. We are making various approaches, not only just to the policymakers, but also reaching out to other interested parties. Now, again, it is not just a problem that's confined to tourism. We just heard from Willis in Mombasa that other sectors are also affected by such an incident. So this is a national problem. I think everybody as a Kenyan must embrace this problem, and that includes other corporate bodies, because from tourism you get a trickle-down effect. You know, the curio vendors are suffering, the manufacturers are suffering, so they all must rally around tourism stakeholders and actually come out with a great strategy and say, well, you know what, we need to have some sort of a face to speak on behalf of our country, and therefore we are all in it to do it together. But if it is left as a tourism problem, then I'm afraid it is going to take us longer to get out of this problem than it would if it was a national situation. So I think that I would agree at some point. I believe Dr. Leakey, although it was for a different reason, said that this is the president should declare this a national disaster. I think that at this point in time, the president has said that the tourism is on its knees. I think it's time now for the policymakers and the nation to rally behind the stakeholders of tourism and actually address it as a national problem.
Now, in a sense, of course, the government is the largest shareholder within the tourism sector, because the majority of what comes in actually goes to the government, especially in terms of the tourism that comes from the international markets. So what are the stakeholders telling the government? What do you expect the government to do at this time? Or what sort of support do you want to receive from the government?
Well, besides, of course, addressing the issue of these incidents, and I'm quite pleased to see that as we speak, the Deputy President is having a crisis meeting with his security apparatus. But I think that it's also important for the government to bail out this industry, considering that it is a spark that usually ignites an economy that's on a downturn. We've seen it from the past where we've had difficulty, the economy was on a downturn, and tourism picked up, and of course it gives a spark. So I think that the first and foremost the government must understand is that this industry is not to be looked at as an industry that is a very rich industry, and that the stakeholders are billionaires who can just fund such a recovery program. But they should come and understand that what is the fallout if they didn't help the industry. And the most important thing is, and I was disappointed to read in the paper the other day, that just about 2 billion was allocated to an industry that generates 96 billion. And that's not even 10%. And out of the 2 billion, 1.13 billion is recurrent expenditure. So you're actually leaving 800 million for marketing. That is $10 million. South Africa has a bigger budget than we have. They have something like $66 million to market their destination. Against these kind of competition, how does $10 million stand?
Okay, yeah.
And more importantly, we need to be able to convince our source markets, the traditional source markets like the United Kingdom, the USA, Europe, etc. Now this is a vast market. If you take $10 million, it's literally peanuts. So they must understand where and how this industry functions, and then give their support. That is what I would think.
Do you have an indication of how the occupancy is currently at the hotels?
Sadly, I just heard this morning that some hotels in Mombasa are running occupancies of 10, 12, 13%. If you look at the safari circuit, it's no better. As a tour operator, for this month, frankly, we are running at 0%. I mean, I have seen my entire fleet in my yard this morning, and it's really disheartening.
And how can the stakeholders within the tourism industry appeal to the regular Kenyans to plug that gap, at least for now?
This is a very important issue. If your economy isn't doing well in the first place, how do you ask the domestic traveler to travel? Now, just to look at as an example, the holidays exhibition at the Sarit Center has been a crowd puller in the past, with most hotels around the country, especially Mombasa, declaring sellouts. This year, I heard it wasn't so. It was not a crowd puller. People didn't book as they had done before, which tells you that obviously, in spite of the fantastic offers that were given to the domestic traveler, they weren't able to take advantage. Why is what we need to ask. Is it the economy? Is it the disposable income that people are short of? I would think that is the case.
Thank you so much, Minaz Manji, for giving us those highlights and, of course, just a look into the impact of what we're seeing currently on the tourism sector. And, of course, we can only keep our fingers crossed and hope that the government does something about it. Well, Citizen Live at 1 takes a short break now. We'll be back with more after the break.